Hi everyone, this is Divya, your session host for today on behalf of Building Accessible, Safe, Inclusive Indian Cities program at National Institute of Urban Affairs. I welcome each and every one of you to our lecture series, Think Urban, Think Inclusive. This is an 8-part lecture series focusing on discussing approaches for making Indian cities more accessible, safe, and inclusive for everyone. The series is designed as a discussion with key sector experts and change makers and leaders to focus and collectively think and discuss ways to improve lives and empower persons with disability, elderly, and young children and their caregivers with everyday freedoms within the urban ecosystem that we are a part of. Before we begin, I'll just share some housekeeping points. This is a pre-recorded event. The platform may have some delay of around 10 seconds. So while recording, depending on the internet connection, you may experience some latency in audio and video. The entire lecture will have closed captioning included at the bottom of this recording. The session is designed in a concise format with a short introduction, setting up of the context, 15 to 18 minutes presentation by the presenter, and a round of questions and answers. If you're watching this on YouTube, we encourage you to use the comment section and leave your feedback or post the questions. For today, we are joined by Mr. Arman Ali. Welcome, Armanji. For the benefit of our audience, let me take a couple of minutes to introduce our speaker for today. Mr. Arman Ali is the Executive Director at the National Center for Promotion of Employment for Disabled People. With a strong belief and commitment that social change can happen through informed advocacy, he has been a dedicated change agent with duty bearers and has used his strong links with the ministries, judges, politicians, and policymakers in fostering change to improve lives of persons with disability. He has also held several honorary positions in various important committees of the government at the state and national levels. He's part of UNESCO's editorial board on the State of Education report for India 2019, Children with Disabilities. Arman is an alumnus of the International Visitor Leadership Program of United States Department of State and has also undergone a leadership in public policy training conducted by Oxford University. Today, he will be speaking with us on the topic of pathway to social and financial well-being for persons with disability. I'll just quickly share a brief on the subject that we are going to be speaking with him today about. Including persons with disability have roles similar to their peers who do not have a disability. In addition to involving and encouraging people in urban decision-making process, it requires making sure that adequate urban policies and practices are in effect within the community or organization. Successful inclusion interventions often lead to increased participation in socially expected life roles and activities such as using public resources, transportation, library, moving about within communities, receiving adequate health care, having relationships, and enjoying other day-to-day activities. Financial inclusion helps pave the path for a sustainable economic growth and development for each individual to reach their potential through an inclusive and engaging process while being part of an urban ecosystem. The Indian government has made multiple attempts to bring large sections of the urban population within the banking system. However, such as lack of awareness, poverty, low income, illiteracy, unemployment, and inadequate branch networking systems continue to restrict financial and social inclusion of certain sections of the society, elderly, and women. With an understanding that there is a need to recognize that in order to develop better, stronger safety nets within our urban systems. And as as a critical need of the hour. We will hear from Mr. Arman on some insights and his thoughts on how that can be better achieved. On that note, I would like to invite Mr. Arman to share his insights on the subject. Welcome, Mr. Arman.
Thank you, Divya, for the lovely introduction. I was really looking forward to this lecture series and to start it. How do I go? Should I share my screen now? And right. So, hi everyone. As introduced by Divya, my name is Arman Ali. I am the Executive Director of NCPEDP, National Center for Promotion of Employment for Disabled People. We are India's leading organization which is into policy change, research-based advocacy, and across disability movement that we lead with our National Disability Network. Today's topic, financial inclusion is something which, in particular, is a major challenge for people with disability. I can just start with myself. Like my personal ATM PIN is known by my driver, all my family's friends who are close to me, my colleagues, because I cannot access an ATM independently when I want to, wherever I want to. It is very rarely I come across an ATM which is accessible. This is just to start with me, a person who is able to articulate his thought, someone who come from an urban space, educated. So when I talk about a country like India, which is vast and has a huge population and the largest population of persons with disabilities in the world, we are almost, according to the census to 2011, we are about 2.6% of the population. It's almost about 2 crores, which is about 20 million people or so. But however, if you look at the World Bank or the United Nations number, if you look at 10% or 15% people with disabilities in the country, we are talking about 100 million people, if not more. Now, with regard to financial provisions offered by the state for persons with disabilities, it must be noted that central government from time to time do provide social safety net, but disability being a state subject, this is largely at the state level, and I would say the schemes, they offer too little, and it is very difficult to access for people with disabilities. The amount differ from state to state. In some of the states, it's about 300 rupees. In some state, like Delhi, it's about 1,500 rupees per month. The selection of people who will be given this pension, this is what is called, is also done on certain criteria. They look at people who have a disability certificate as one of the fundamental document which is required for one to get access to that. There is a cap on number in certain state that there is only 100,000 people in the first year, and another 100,000 will be added in the second year, and so on. Some states require you to be registered with the employment exchange, and if you are registered for 2 years and you still haven't got an employment, that's when you come start getting a pension. So there are various rules and things. Many of these processes now has become digital in nature and online, and there's something called direct benefit transfer in India, where wherein a person who is a beneficiary from the government scheme gets the money transferred to the bank account, to his or her bank account directly. Now, I would, when you talk about a bank account, financial inclusion, how many people with disabilities do have bank accounts is another thing to be noted. People, particularly who are blind, people who have, psychosocial disability, or people who have developmental disability, they by system are kept out of the process of opening a bank account. Those who have bank account find it extremely difficult to access it. And then if you bring in a digital point, so India being a large country, there is a huge digital divide in terms of accessing any information which is online by people who live in rural areas and poor. Even urban phenomena, if you look at people with disability, access to certain digital services continue to be inaccessible to them for certain kind of disabilities. If the service provider has not kept in mind the accessibility need of persons with disability. I must mention that it is mandatory for a person with disability to have a disability certificate to get any such benefit from the government. And according to the National Sample Survey, as NSSO data of 2019, only 28% of the 28% of persons with disability in India have disability certificate. Now that will give you an idea how many people are actually able to access such an provision which is given by the state. Also, during the lockdown, the state announced that the persons with disability will be given an amount of 300 rupees per month. 1,000 rupees, it was announced by the finance minister at that time. But again, if you look at that thing, it was only for persons with disability whose disabilities were above 80% and above, and they were beneficiary of a particular scheme under the Panchayat and Rural Development Ministry. So it missed out on a large other population of people with disabilities who were part of other schemes or not registered. So as I said, there are schemes and provisions from the state to provide safety net, financial safety net for persons with disability, but it is too little and access is difficult because multiple gatekeeping. I think the perception, is often a system is made with a lot of gatekeeping mechanisms, which is the idea is to stop malpractice, but in the process, it creates a lot of barriers for people with disabilities, and it's often, as I said, too late for people with disability to come through. Now, if I come on the universal basic income. In a country like India, where the poverty rate is very high, and I don't think something like a universal basic income is feasible in a country like us. And if I talk about a metropolitan city like Mumbai, above 60% of its population is living in slum-like area or in slum-like condition. And the other cities, it has 30 to 40, and its population living in conditions and other. And for instance, the pension which is given for people with disabilities, as I mentioned, is way too small. So 300 rupees or 1,500 rupees is too less a number. So what should be the figure for a person to be given out as a universal basic income is something which I think we need to be to come up to that point. It is still not clear, and the amount required to be provided is not available. I don't think it's available with us at the moment, and it's not budgeted. If you look at the budget of 2021, the budget which was there by the Union of India, it was brought down. The DPWD, the department which considered disability, the budget was actually brought down subsequent by a very almost about 15% or so. There was a cut in the budget. So where is the money is what is I would like to say. So in the amount required to provide a universal basic income in a developed countries, you presume that there is where you presume that there's an inequality or injustice. There are multiple issues which issues associated with the UBI, like what will be the standard for calculating a UBI? Will it be consideration in the addition of the cost of living with a disability? There is a cost of living with disability. For example, a person with disability, somebody like me who is a wheelchair user, I find it next to impossible to use a public transport. I find it impossible to use anything that I want to buy. Cannot go to the shop in the neighborhood. I particularly have to go to a particular kind of a shopping center which is accessible for people with disabilities who are wheelchairs like me. I can't go to the nearby coffee shop. I have to have a personal transport with a driver, caregiver, there are comorbidity. So the cost of disability is something which needs to be factored in before we actually come to something like an UBI. And in India, where poverty and disability are so instinctively linked, UBI would be a piecemeal approach towards trying to reduce inequality of poverty and injustice. It is a pushback, even in the UK, which has one of the best healthcare systems in the world, where waiting period of a treatment is about 7 to 8 months. So in a country like India, where doctors are not willing to work in rural areas, access to health, UBI will be a distant dream as we speak, as of now as we speak, and it, as I think it's whatever the government does, in terms of this pensions which we give, it's like a band-aid, a band-aid approach for for people with disabilities, for them to just survive. Thing. So, what will work? If I look, you think for financial inclusion, persons in view of the financial inclusion of persons with disabilities and community. So if you have to achieve this in a long-term action and vision, I think there is a need that persons with disability. Am I on the right slide? Yeah, sorry, just check. Sorry. So I think there's a need to create a lot of emphasis to be laid on a community-based work. For instance, caregiving should not be professionalized and monetized, making it difficult for persons with disability to access it. Prejudices about persons with disabilities, another roadblock in order to achieve long-term action and vision. Awareness and sensitization, and persons and persons with disability needs to be created. I think this and also I think what I personally have been also, I just mentioned in my previous slide that financial inclusion, in a truest sense, can only be possible when disability inclusive budgeting is done. Persons with disability should be included right from the planning stage and to the implementation stage. Now, and it is not so much only dependent on something like a financial inclusion. Otherwise also, whenever we are developing infrastructure, and a system which is like education or healthcare or a transportation system for a city, it must include people with disability. It must include the voices of people with disability, their concerns, and not somebody who was kept out of the decision making in a planning stage. And I think this is what creates the huge barriers and the huge gap that we have of inequality and injustice for people with disability. Even if you look at the poorest of the poor people in the world or in the country, where you look at India, you will find disabled people in them. It cuts across though, but poverty and persons with disability has it's like one leads to another kind of a situation. So I think there is a need to create a lot of awareness around disability and the involving of community-based work. I think will be a way forward for it. The impact of COVID-19 pandemic on persons with disabilities, financial impact. The persons with disabilities have been the hardest hit. There is no, arguments to defend that they have not. And this is something which is a global phenomena. And when you look at a country, developing country like India, persons faced double discrimination and marginalized. In order to understand the status of persons with disabilities vis-a-vis COVID-19 and during the lockdown, NCP-DP, we conducted a study titled "Locked Down and Left Behind," which was published and based on the survey which we conducted over 1,000 people with disabilities across the country. And we'd say that 67% of persons with disability did not receive any central or state government pension scheme. So it speaks volume. These people whom we spoke were based across the country. We touched almost 20 states, and these are randomly picked up people from urban and rural areas. But the fact that did not receive any such financial support during the lockdown, I think it created a lot of financial burden on people with disability. Majority of persons with disability, are engaged in unorganized sector and working as small vendors, doing small unorganized trade, selling food items, vending vegetables, fruits, and so on. So these people have been have their livelihoods completely destroyed due to the lockdown, and largely even organized sector, most of the people who were doing very manual kind of job where it would require to do data input and stuff like that have lost their jobs also. So in many states, there's the persons with disability where disabilities were not, their pensions were not released in time. So there was this, and also these pensions. No, it's not something which comes to your bank account or to your hand on a monthly basis. They are also done in a very periodic kind of a thing. Every 6 months, every 3 months, that the money is being released for people with disabilities. As I again, like to mention that, the knowledge and understanding around disability is so limited within the system, the state, and people who are working around it, and even people with disabilities themselves. The impact of COVID-19 for persons with disability is such that, none of the information which was released by the state or the health department were made accessible for people with disability to start with. None of the guidelines of lockdown or unlocking process, which included people with disabilities into it. Now, any financial, as I mentioned, during the lockdown period, when the finance minister announced, relief for people with disability, it was only 1,000 rupees for 3 months. It was 333 rupees per month for persons with disability, which had a very limited impact, or very, very limited impact. So I think, this requires that larger, awareness campaigns need to be built around the issues of persons with disabilities, so that the society at large understands the need, the gaps, so that there is a more participatory approach towards inclusion of people with disability into this. And also, sometimes you feel that people with disability in the rural areas are always marginalized and left behind because of this issue. And yeah, I think so. So this is still, as we speak, we are in the middle of the pandemic. There is a vaccination hesitancy in people with disability. The equity Vaccine equity is something again which has been discussed. We read reports about on various news where people with disability may have got vaccinated but have not received their certification. Many states, people have disability and not been able to vaccinate it because they are always homebound and there is vaccine hesitancy. So there is so much more which impacts the lives of people with disabilities. And I think creating awareness around it is something we must look ahead at. I think public private partnership. I think this is all one of the way ahead if you look at the approach. In order to have a public-private partnership work, the decision making needs to be in the hands of public. That is, the decision making has to be in the hands of persons with disabilities. State can only be an enabler. I think there is a need to create a lot of awareness around disability, which needs to be increased in order to have a public-private partnership. And it looks like, in a situation where everything is getting very private in nature, unless there is an awareness around disabled people and their actual figure and the number of people with disability, which often misread or miscalculated as a very small number, but the numbers are large, and I think it cannot be neglected at any point of time, and we have to ensure that persons with disabilities are not left behind. But I also think that it's a way forward, because a lot of the spaces that you see, the businesses that you see, the services that you see is being run by private parties. So I think it's an enabler, and I think getting people with disability into the decision-making process will be the way forward. Yes, I already mentioned about the way forward. I said mechanism to provide financial preservation through institutional mechanism. I don't think it's a perfect model. So I think we have to create mechanism to provide financial provision through an institutional mechanism. The goal should not be to create a perfect model, but a system which has inefficiencies. There should be scope for error and learning in the system. I think a lot of this boils down to awareness among people with disability and society at large. And mostly the state and the cities which we are living in, we must be conscious of the fact that people with disabilities are not they don't come in one one size fit all kind of a thing. It's a spectrum, and the needs are various, and largely they are in unorganized sector. So there are many things that the cities or the states or the center needs to be very conscious about when they create infrastructure, services, financial models. I think one has to be very conscious and to the fact that people with disabilities cannot be left behind. And so I think that's it. I think there's a lot of work that is need to be done in this area, and mostly so we have to learn from states like the UK and so on, and bring in model. But there are challenges wherever you go. Even if the most developed country has issues around people with disabilities and their financial inclusion and other inclusions as such. I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Arman. Thank you for your wonderful presentation, and a couple of very, very interesting points that you've brought about, which are kind of key to social and financial well-being of persons with disability. You also addressed various aspects to do with acknowledgement and addressing the needs in order to achieve better financial and social safety nets. And I'm going to probe you a little bit now and have a quick Q&A session from here on, just to understand some of these aspects a little bit more in detail. It is very interesting what you highlighted just now, because you spoke about, you started your conversation with how, something as common and as casual as having an ATM pin and having an ATM access is so easy for each one of us, but you don't have the possibility at most times to use it yourself, so you have to depend on somebody whom you can really trust to use your banking services, which are very basic banking services. So you're highlighting both the aspects to do with physical infrastructure and as some kind of barrier, but also social infrastructure, but how physical infrastructure is also one of the aspects that at many times doesn't lead to financial inclusion, so to say. And we find an ATM at most common spaces, and most often they don't have accessibility for all. So it is very interesting that you've highlighted these aspects. And what I wanted to sort of understand a little bit more in detail from you is that, if you can share, like, of course, like, there is an extent of social safety net, especially in terms of what is offered by the government and state and cities for persons with disability. You did detail out like how easy or difficult it is to access them, but how do you think, or what do you think could be some quick measures that the state or the center could take up, where they can improve them to some extent? Of course, the mentioning of improving the physical infrastructure is a very simple step, in that's actually something which should have been done already, but could there be any other active measures which could help in financial inclusion?
Divya, during my presentation, while making it also, I really had to think hard and talk to people to understand what is the other view, because we being disability right activists and into the disability, we see a lot of issues around it. And so I talk to people who are outside the sector, we're talking about things. So I think one thing is one of the very basic thing is that we don't know our people with disability. One of the things which the state or the city or can do is to have the right data in place. Unless and until you know how many people with disabilities are there and what are their needs, you will not be able to bring out a system which caters to everyone. So I think for India is due for a census to ensure that this census is inclusive. It is inclusive. It is taking people with disability as one of the data point where they're going to count every. It'll be in head count. But to ensure that there is an awareness that large people with disability come forward and get themselves enumerated is one. Because unless you don't know what are the needs, you cannot plan. So everything boils down to a very planning stage. Now, the needs are not very physical all the time. No, I'm talking about an ATM will not be accessible. No, for me, it is a wheelchair access. For people who are blind, they need, an audio support or a talking ATM, and for somebody else, it is something else. And also, whatever services that you create, which makes it friendly for people with disability, is friendly for all. It does not hinder anybody's else inclusion. So as I said, the state is doing whatever it has because it looks at a particular data, which the particular data and plans things around it. So as I mentioned, that the numbers which we have and what the numbers actually are different. So that's why I say it's too little sometimes what is being offered. And sometimes you think People with disability are not part of the system, and there is this approach towards disability, which is a very charity and welfare based, makes it even difficult and becomes a burden on the state, which should not be. People with disabilities are equal citizens, they have equal rights, and they can participate in nation building for sure. And it can only happen again when you involve them into the process at a city. One of the very basic thing which our country and largely, developing countries lack is the concept of universal design. To use universal design, no matter what you are doing, if it is a service or an infrastructure, or could be anything, a transport system, or healthcare system, or if you talk about water and sanitation, anything that we think which makes a city robust must include people with disability into it, must include people with disability from a design stage, from a drawing board stage. And if that doesn't happen, we will continue to alienate millions of people with disability.
I think what you're pointing out is very interesting, and what you also mentioned in your presentation, that one aspect, that of course that the universal basic income schemes, what they do is either they're too little, they're offering very little money, they're not very comprehensive, they are not all people are mapped under these schemes, and another big problem is that if the amount that is offered is so little that you cannot even get by even a day sometimes with income of that nature. And on top of it, because they're not very they're not regular, they may be delayed, they may be quarterly or 6 monthly, so that also makes it very hard for a persons with disability to actually depend on them, because they cannot really get by with certain, money as little as 300 per month. So you're also highlighting the aspect of how they need to be regularly revised and monitored, that how much is what somebody to live a dignified life in that state would require, in that city they would need, and how the state can provide for it, what are some of the provisions or benefits that they can offer in terms of acknowledging that this is something that persons with disability, understanding that they will also have a family to take care of. So how much will be required, and how much we need to cater for. Do you have some perhaps do you have some examples that you can share from any practices that you've seen across the globe, or any other interventions that you can share as a good practice that we could learn from?
Divya, any good practices in a country like Norway, or if we look at like Sweden, or other smaller countries, it cannot be compared with India. India, the numbers are huge. It's a large population which we live with and to deal with on an everyday basis. So, any good practice is way beyond the population. We put 3-4 countries of their size together, we are far more than that. Put together a population of 7-8 countries, we are more than that. So this has to be looked at from a very different angle altogether. Now, financial inclusion happens when you are there. When you're not there, you're not included. You are included in a school when you reach the school. If you're not reaching the school, how are you included? How are you inclusive? So inclusion cannot happen like a piecemeal kind of thing, that you're included here and you're excluded there. There has to be a larger plan, and there has to be an individualized mechanism for persons to choose. You see, not every person with disability needs pension. Some people are doing all right. So, but those who need are also not able to access it. So now this UBI or something which is needed for a particular kind of people who need support. What we need to do is to create empowering, environment for people with disability. So one, we have to acknowledge that this is the problem at hand. And second, the people with disability themselves have to understand that it is not about the pension that they have to work for. They have to work and get to a space where they are earning salaries, there is income, and not based on a pension. Imagine a 20-year-old or 18-year-old has just completed 10 plus 2 of education and registering themselves for a pension. One should aspire to get a livelihood which generates income. So those kind of a mechanism where you're creating more people who are skilled, people who are getting into entrepreneurship, people who are able to find jobs, and then you look at making their financial inclusion, which is seamless in terms of when you want to access various other schemes, looking at in a small healthcare system where you can invest a small money and get a health coverage for people with disability and other services like that. I think where this is, I think for a caregiver or for your basic mobility need, your need for going from one place to another. So I think it has to be looked at from a different angle than just sending people money in their bank account, which they may not be able to use it at the end of the day. Their family members may take it from them, and so there
Yeah,
is
I
a need.
think, yeah, I think I understand the point you're trying to make, and it's very valuable that, if people, persons with disability who think that they are young, they're capable, they're educated, and they have the access, and we should encourage them to become an active part of of being part of the workforce, so they can actually contribute to developing this pool of money that can be used for social building better safety nets, and also decrease the pressure on the government as well to develop comprehensive pension schemes. I also agree with you that we cannot entirely depend on pension schemes and all of that, but if somebody really requires, there should be a method.
Yes, there, of course,
And
I
I wanted
agree.
to discuss those methods with
Right.
you, like what could be some of those, uh, perhaps some interesting methods and mechanisms that could
Now,
be very resourceful that the government agencies can use, or some ideas that you may have, which you can share, that the government schemes can acknowledge and can translate. I understand the fact that the scale is very, very different, and we're dealing with a very different sort of, in terms of numbers, in terms of our problems, and in terms of our social systems as well. However, there must be some ideas that planning systems or financial schemes can, which to some extent can be not entirely translated, but we can take some lessons from them and develop schemes based on those understandings and learnings.
I would reiterate that something like UBI is going to be very difficult to implement in a country like India. Even some of the Western countries find it challenging. So, the entire discourse, the way you notice, will change when we bring in disability. But if you look at other marginalized group, if you look at a widow, which government of India or other states give pension to, get 1,000 rupees or so. So 1,000 rupees for a widow, 1,000 rupees for a person with disability is a vast difference, because one is not able to, 1,000 rupees, I may take a bus, pay 10 rupees or 15 rupees as a fare and reach a place and get something which is free health service offered by the state. But for a person with disability, the same amount of money will not be able to access the same services. So one, as I mentioned earlier, has to be a very, one, we need to create a lot of awareness. We have to ensure that our services, which is for people in general, are accessible for people with disability. That reduces cost. So even if you get 1,000 rupees or 1,500, some of the people with disabilities are quite happy with getting 1,500 rupees per month in a state like Delhi. It matters, you 1,500, you can use that money for something you want to pay for your mobile phone, or you pay for certain services that you use, or you travel 3-4 times a month to a particular place where you can get something done. It means, but you know what, it cannot be, something like a blanket approach is what I wanted to say. It has to have a participatory approach where people with disabilities are able to bring about their concerns, that it is not the pension that we need, but we need XYZ, or the pension can come in a format which is gives me health insurance coverage, or health coverage, or my transportation which I need, which should be taken care of because I need to travel to work every day, which is 30 kilometers from my house. I need a free bus service. So, these mechanisms cannot be a blanket approach that 300 or 1500 will work for all. So this is where I think there is need to be a participatory approach to understand and develop this kind of a thing. Affirmative action or social security from various the state across the world works, and some of them works because includes health services, it includes education which is for free. It's free for us in India as well. But if you're an adult, if you're not getting an economic you're not economically independent, then what are the measures that is need to be done? It's what happens, when you look at a pension for a person with disability who is a 25-year-old, it looks like the life has come to an end, and that's the story of your life, that you have to be dependent on this pension for the rest of it. These messaging has to be right. That this is a stopgap support for you for getting to something more meaningful, which you are able to earn and contribute, support your family. So this is a complete, and I'm glad you organize this lecture series. This kind of a discourse does not happen in our country. This discourse has to happen. People with disability need to look beyond the pension and look for a salary, and then you'll pay for your insurance cover, which you are denied. The insurance company don't give you a health coverage because of your disability. So your inclusion can only happen when you are there, when you reach a place, when you are participating in a particular exercise or an activity where there are discourse around you, which you can express your views on. So I think there has to be a participatory approach. There has to be dialogue in the state. Each state has their own culture, their challenges, and approaches towards disability is different, and marginalized groups are different. So I think that's what I personally think. I cannot compare any states in the Western countries which are doing well with India. It's completely different picture.
I hear you. I understand that what you brought about is also very interesting. You kind of mentioned the point that that the schemes also need to encourage people that this is a timely support, but it is also for a certain time, to sort of help you, uplift you, but also to encourage you to take up some amount of skills and some amount of support in terms of how you can contribute better within the given system, and we are happy to support you. And I think that discourse and the way we kind of understand financial mechanism has to change. The narrative needs to change to bring about a better transition within these systems. And I'm really glad that we are kind of discussing these points, because these are very pertinent, and in our mainstream discussions about physical infrastructure, most of the times we miss out on all of these. On that note, I would also like to thank you, Arman, and for this insightful talk, and your sharing your insights and your inputs on this subject, and most importantly for your commitment to building better and inclusive urban system. And on behalf of BASIC team and NIUA, I would like to thank you for taking out your time and sharing all your thoughts on this through this session with all of us. And it's been wonderful to hear from you. it's always a pleasure to listen to your thoughts and realize that there's a need to act now on building better for an inclusive urban future. Before we close this session, I would like to remind our audience that this lecture is part of an 8-part lecture series and can be easily accessed through National Urban Learning Platform and also NIUA's YouTube page. The links of both will be in the description box below. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Divya. I'm glad I came here to speak, and for me also, thinking on certain lines which you poked me to think on, I think will open new ideas for me to use in my daily work. But no matter what you do at NIUA or with basics, think of a person with disability, that a person with disability will be there, and a person with disability is not always on a wheelchair. So it's a spectrum, it's a diverse group with all kind of intersectionality. So it will make your work very interesting. Anybody's works make it interesting and inclusive.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you
So much. Thanks for your time and your feedback.